The new term for the U.S. Supreme Court begins soon, and Vice President Kamala Harris is lobbying an attack at the court's conservative makeup. That set off some back and forth between the Vice President and Chief Justice John Roberts after the VP lashed out at the High Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Let's watch together.
I think this is an activist court. We had an established right for almost half a century, which is the right of women to make decisions about their own body as an extension of what we have decided to be the privacy rights to which all people are entitled. And this court took that constitutional right away. And we are suffering as a nation because of it. That causes me great concern about the integrity of the court overall.
Well, then we saw in his first appearance since that decision, Justice Roberts. Here's a quote. "People can say what they want. Simply because people disagree with an opinion is not a basis for questioning the legitimacy of the court. If the court doesn't retain its legitimate function of interpreting the Constitution, I'm not sure who would take up that mantle. You don't want the political branches telling you what the law is, and you don't want public opinion to be the guide of what the appropriate decision is." Wow. What do you say?
Thank goodness he said that, because of all the things that Kamala Harris has said over the last 2 years, that is the most egregious and ridiculous. 2 points on this. You remember law school, ladies? Socratic method. Law is a robust exchange of ideas, oftentimes in disagreement, to arrive at a solution. When you disagree, that is not the end of the republic. That's the way it is supposed to work. So for her to say that, a former attorney general, mind you, is insane. Secondarily, you always hear the Democrats say, threat to democracy, threat to democracy. How does calling into question the legitimacy of one of the 3 branches of government help democracy? That right there is a real threat. If we don't have a Supreme Court that people believe is legitimate, we're done.
That's right.
You know what I hear you saying is that it's not the end of democracy, it's actually proof of life.
Proof of life, 100%. That's the way it's supposed to work.
That's right.
Emily.
The vice president should be the first person, along with the president, that respects the separation of powers. She should be the first person to quell aggression, not to stoke the fire. And the fact that it's coming from her lips, from a former attorney general and a district attorney, who you would think would then understand that this decision was actually legally sound. You would think that she would be the first person to see the analogy behind what Chief Justice Roberts there talked about, not bowing to public pressure and not telling the court how to rule, with Brown v. Board of Education, because that's exactly what happened then. And yet the court stood firm, just like it did today, with the same legal reasoning. The fact that she called it a constitutional right, to me, is really shocking, given that we're supposed to accept that she's an attorney. But the fact that it's coming from the lips of my vice president is absolutely aberrant. It's totally unacceptable.
Lily.
Yeah, it is dangerous to go this path, especially because of who she is. Put politics aside, or even Kamala Harris, change the name. But it's what it says to the American people at a time when we're looking for unity, for some sort of stability and clarity, and to point fingers and analyze and try to label the court at this time when the disapproval rating for any institution is at the lowest. Gallup said it, that since 1979, they haven't seen anything this low. It does the opposite for exactly what the American people are looking for. It is scary. And again, there's a reason why, you know, in elementary school, we learned that branches have a job and each of them stay in their lane. And this is just scary territory when the vice president sounds more like a political analyst with opinions than holding the big office that she holds and protects.
So a verbal activist, and in light of a murder charge, attempted murder charge on a justice. Like you're saying, it's ridiculous.
Oh, but they don't speak of that. I don't even know if they recognize it.
Right,
Yeah,
true.
We don't know what they're thinking.
You're right.
Kaylee, she missed an opportunity as the nation's first vice president to say, I may not agree with every woman out there, but I sure do value their perspectives. She could be the one to say, the next time we have conversations about Roe versus Wade or anything at such a high-profile level, let's make sure we have as many women who think differently from each other at the table. Can you imagine
Yeah.
But then people would get her confused with like Margaret Thatcher, or they wouldn't know who she was if she did that. But what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, she only cares about the far left, so she'll never say anything conciliatory like that. You expect this from AOC, who last week, Vanity Fair, they said, oh, the Supreme Court would be an impediment to you if you ever became president, and she acquiesced with that. You expect it from AOC, not from Kamala. But Kamala went on to question another institutional hallmark, and that is the filibuster. The same interview, she said she can't wait to get rid of it in a new Congress. She called it archaic. And when Chuck Todd said, hey, but you were against getting rid of the filibuster in 2017. She said, when I won, and she quickly corrected herself, when we won, me and Joe Biden. And I'm paraphrasing. She said the extremists passed laws making it more difficult to vote. Well, not true. Fact check. Georgia, there was increased minority turnout after they passed their voter integrity law. But listen to what she says. Essentially abolish the filibuster, abolish the Electoral College. The Supreme Court's in question. The institutions are the problem.
I want to go back to I won. I mean, he has called her the president more than once.
More than once, yes.
Biden has.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.